which is America's closest ally in South America, can now boast full gender equality in the government's cabinet. It is led by the new president, Iván Duque. Nonetheless, Colombia is a country under pressure from all fronts. From the east, almost 1 million Venezuelan people have poured into the country for basic food, water and medicine, as their nation continues its slow downward spiral to total economic collapse, while their president, Nicolas Maduro, calls the humanitarian crisis there fake news. From the north, Colombia faces the United States pressuring it to crack down on cocaine production, which has surged by more than 200% in the past 5 years. And from within, the FARC peace deal that ended decades of war is on shaky ground. The country's conservative new president, Iván Duque, ran a campaign that criticized the peace deal that had been sealed by his predecessor. But when he sat down with me on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, he told me that he wants to tweak it, not tear it up. President Duque, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Christiane. It's a great pleasure to be here.
You are a young leader. You're one of a crop of young leaders around the world right now, and there's a lot of promise and potential being transferred to your shoulders, and most of all about the peace deal in Colombia. I think what everybody wants to know is, even though you don't necessarily agree with all of the parameters of the peace deal, are you going to stick to it, the one with the FARC, your predecessor?
I have said it publicly. We want to fulfill the word of the Colombian state. For people who are making the transition to legality, we will fulfill the word. We will help them succeed. But people who want to remain in criminal activities will be brought to justice. We want to bring investment to the places where violence was present before. And we want to create alternative development for people who have been in illegal business, like legal crops like coca. So yes, the answer is yes. But the thing is, the only way to succeed is with legality, so that if there's somebody who wants to go back to criminal activities, they will face a punishment.
What about the fact that your mentor, the previous president of your party, President Uribe, doesn't like this deal and feels that it should be opened up and renegotiated, if at all, with a lot more weight on victims and a lot less weight on some of the deals that were offered to the FARC?
We said publicly that we didn't want to derail the agreement, but we wanted to introduce some corrections to the things that were not going well. One of the things that is not going well, Christiane, is that illegal crops have been growing exponentially.
Cocaine you're talking about?
Yes.
A massive increase.
Coca grew from 50,000 hectares 6 years ago to more than 200,000. So if we want to have a lasting peace, we definitely need to do better in substitution, eradication, and alternative development. We also want people that haven't turned on their weapons or assets to do it for the sake of the victims. And the last thing is that people that have committed crimes against humanity, those people should leave Congress if they face a punishment, and the party can replace them. But we cannot have people that have committed crimes against humanity standing in the Colombian Congress. Those are essential points that many people voted for in the election.
So as you mentioned, and as I said, I think there's some huge figure of a percentage of the increase of the cocaine production. I mean, really, really big. Some people say even bigger than under the sort of narcos, Pablo Escobar's time. What is it that is causing this to balloon again? Is it what you're saying?
I think there were many mistakes that were made. I think putting an end to aerial spray was a mistake. I think not putting enough pressure to the emerging cartels was a mistake. So that's why in the last 7 weeks that I've been in office, I have created a plan called the Diamond Plan. We have confiscated tons of cocaine. We have also dismantled some of those groups. We have chased some of those cartels. And I'm asking to have a better coordinated action with other countries so that we can be more effective in interdiction.
You talked about, spraying, but of course the previous administration stopped the spraying because it was a health hazard. The civilians in the areas were complaining of a serious damage to their health.
That's a very interesting question. Where's the demand coming from? It comes from North America, from Europe, even from the region. And even in our country, consumption is growing. We have now more than 800,000 consumers. So that's why I've also taken a stand. We don't want to see more drugs in the streets being easily accessible to kids. But we also need to do better on prevention. So we want to have the integral policy working. That's issue number one. And the second part of your question is aerial spray is one of the tools. It cannot be the only one. It has to be part of the strategies. We can be more effective with new tools. There are drones being tried as mechanisms. There are other mechanisms of more precision.
How much of a problem, and I think it is a problem, is the implosion of Venezuela on your border and the, I think, more than 1 million people who've sought help and refuge and just food and medicine by crossing into your country?
Christian, it's a big problem. I mean, this is the most horrible migration crisis Latin America has seen in its history, maybe. It's one of the most terrifying humanitarian crises. There's a dictatorship that has destructed all the economy, that has annihilated liberties, that has destroyed independent powers, and people are just running. So I have decided that we're not going to close the border. We have to give them support. The source of the problem is the dictatorship. And I think all countries in the international community must isolate the dictatorship and open the ground for a return of democracy.
Well, it's no secret that you and President Maduro do not particularly have a high opinion of each other. You don't think that he's the right person, you've just said, and he has been personally somewhat insulting to you. Let me just play what President Maduro said.
Iván Duque con su cara de angelito.
Iván Duque, with his little angelic face, is a devil. He puts on an angelic face, but he is a devil, and he walks around with his little angelic hand asking for money. Iván Duque is afraid of me, and I challenge him to a public debate whenever and wherever he wants.
So I don't know how you respond to that rhetoric, but also they have accused Colombian diplomats as well as from Chile and Mexico of being behind the attempted assassination on him last month.
He accused my predecessor and he accused the past administration, and he was supposed to be very close to them. That's what he said in the past. I'm not going to get into a personal discussion with Maduro. I mean, my criticism is because there's a reality, Christian. There's a dictatorship. There's an annihilation of all the economic apparatus, and there's a humanitarian and migration crisis that is evident in the eyes of the world. So my call is for the international community to do something. The absence of an action in the last years has made that dictatorship stronger. Now we need to isolate it and make the Venezuelan people return to liberties and have a vibrant democracy.
Does that do something, include a military intervention? You saw the New York Times had some exclusive report just this month about rebels, people opposing Maduro, talking to the United States about a potential intervention and a potential plot to overthrow Maduro. I want to know what you say about that, but particularly because right here, President Trump talked about it in his meeting with you. Can I just play that? Okay, first tell me, is it good or bad?
The thing is, I have never gave a favorable opinion to a military action because that's what the dictator wants. He wants to create a demon so that he can use patriotism in order to remain in office. That's not the solution. The solution should be a stronger diplomatic and economic isolation of the regime so that people are more empowered to push him out. But not a military intervention, because that's all Maduro wants in order to get legitimacy and remain himself in office.
So let me play what President Trump said on this issue when he was sitting with you.
It's a regime that, frankly, could be toppled very quickly by the military if the military decides to do that. And you saw how the military spread as soon as they heard a bomb go off way above their head. That military was running for cover.
I mean, it could be toppled very quickly if anybody decided to do that.
If you look at what he announced in the Assembly, President Trump, he announced stronger sanctions against Maduro and his closest circle. And I applaud that because it's a way of putting sanctions where the necessary action has to be focused, not against the people. It has to go against the ones who are running the regime. So I value that. But at the same time, we need to have better diplomatic coordination.
Okay. I want to ask you one last personal question.
Okay.
Were you in a rock band when you were younger?
I was in the 90s. I had a rock band and I enjoyed it a lot.
And how did it set you up for being a president for today?
Well, you know, I still live music. I have my electric guitar in my office, and not too often, but maybe sometimes when I have a little bit of stress, I just play a little bit and sing. So I enjoyed rock and roll. And those were good moments of my life that I want to keep always in my memories.
Great. President Iván Duque, thank you very much for joining me.
It has been a pleasure for me to be here.
His stress buster in all these difficult times. Turning now to our next guest,